Children of the Black Goat. Chapter 3 Sheep Among Wolves. The city of Aethelgard rose from the muddy valley like a giant, polished pearl dropped into a pigsty. The walls were constructed of white stone, towering and seamless, so smooth that not even a rat could find a foothold. Azure banners embroidered with the silver swan snapped proudly from the watchtowers, arrogant and pristine against the gray sky. Elin froze in the middle of the high road. Her mouth hung slightly open. She was accustomed to rotting thatch roofs, damp caves and charred ruins. She had never seen anything so whole. "It's too bright," Elin whispered, squinting against the harsh glare reflecting off the copper-plated domes within. "That is its purpose," Silas grunted, adjusting his pack and pulling Elin's hood down lower over her brow. "It is designed to blind the peasants, to make them believe that those living inside are gods." Silas watched the line of travelers queuing before the massive arched gate. Merchants with wagons piled high with silks, knights in gleaming plate armor atop high destriers, and a throng of farmers trying to sell off their winter produce. "Listen to me," Silas leaned down to whisper, his voice blending into the ambient roar of the crowd. "The forest has the laws of the forest. The city has the laws of the city. Out there monsters growl. In here they smile." "They smile?" Elin asked, bewildered. "And they will slit your throat with a promissory note or a whispered accusation. So remember, don't stare at anyone for too long. Don't look surprised. And most importantly, never show your poverty." Silas patted his coin pouch, where the silver coins he had earned from selling the deserter Kale's dagger rested silently. "Today I am a failed merchant from the north, and you are my sickly daughter. We do not beg. We walk in as if we belong." They joined the line. The air at the gate was thick with the cloying scent of cheap perfume, horse manure, and fresh pastries from hawkers. It was an assault on the senses for two souls who had just emerged from the wild. "Papers?" the gate guard asked. He was nothing like the rough soldiers of the borderlands. He wore a velvet doublet of deep blue, his mustache was waxed to a point, and he looked at Silas as one might look at a pile of refuse that needed sweeping. "Lost to the floods at the fork of the Boundary River, Lord," Silas said, his voice no longer the gravelly growl of a threat, but smooth, tinged with the exhaustion of a man beaten down by bad luck. "My wagon went with the water. I only managed to save my old skin and this girl." The guard raised an eyebrow, glancing at the battered sword on Silas's hip. "A merchant who wears a sword? Troubled times, Lord. Two-legged wolves outnumber the four-legged kind these days." The guard smirked. He extended a gloved hand, a gesture familiar to the point of boredom. "Entry tax. 2 silver for the adult, 1 for the child, and 5 for the processing fee of lost documents. 5 silver coins. It was extortion. It was enough to feed them for a week. Silas didn't blink. He knew this was a performance. If he haggled, he revealed his poverty. If he got angry, he revealed his soldier's pride. He reached into his pouch, counted out exactly 8 silver coins, and placed them into the guard's white-gloved palm. "The law is the law," Silas said lightly, though his gut twisted at the loss. "I hope the lads can use it for some warm wine. The draft at the gate is terrible this time of year." The guard's hand closed over the coins. The sneer on his lips lifted slightly, becoming less contemptuous. "Smart man, grandfather. Go on. And keep the girl away from the upper plaza. The bishop is holding a procession today. They don't like seeing the sick." "Understood." They passed under the stone archway. The shadow of the wall washed over them, and then the light hit. Elin almost screamed. Before her lay not mud tracks but paved stone. White stone, perfectly flat, laid in geometric patterns. Houses rose 3-4 stories high, pressed shoulder to shoulder, boasting balconies overflowing with winter flowers and windows of sparkling glass. And people. Thousands of them. The noise hit Elin like a physical wave. The cry of hawkers, the grind of carriage wheels on stone, laughter, arguments, the tolling of cathedral bells. Everything mixed into a chaotic choir that made her head spin. She gripped Silas's tunic, her face draining of color. "Too many people," Elin whispered, her eyes darting frantically. Can they see us?" "No one sees us," Silas said, pulling her close to the edge of the street to avoid a luxury carriage thundering past. "That is the beauty of the city, kid. It's too loud for them to hear your heart beating. Too crowded for them to notice you are different. In the forest we hide behind trees. Here we hide behind the noise." They pushed deeper into the market district. Silas needed to find a cheap inn, but not so squalid that it attracted thieves or the night watch. Elin walked like a sleepwalker. Her eyes were glued to the stalls. Stalls selling crimson silks, stalls piled with spices that tickled the nose, stalls displaying intricate wooden toys. Suddenly she stopped. In front of her was a street performer. A man in a cloak stitched with silver stars, performing sleight of hand with glass orbs. He tossed 3 orbs into the air. They didn't fall. They hovered, spinning around his head, refracting the sunlight into rainbows. The crowd gathered around applauded and cheered. City children laughed, tossing copper coins into his hat. Elin was mesmerized. She let go of Silas's hand, stepping a little closer. Magic. She breathed, her black eyes wide with wonder. She felt a familiar energy. A vibration in the air, just like when she touched the fox or when she prayed to the wheat. Unconsciously, Elin raised her hand. Her tiny fingers danced slightly, mimicking the rhythm of the spheres. Something happened. One of the glass orbs floating in the air suddenly broke its orbit. It didn't fall into the magician's hand. It flew over the heads of the crowd, tracing a gentle arc, and landed softly in Elin's open palm. The crowd went silent. The magician froze, his hand still raised in the air. Elin looked at the orb in her hand. It was warm and humming. She smiled, a smile of pure innocence. "It likes me," Elin said, looking up at the people. But no one smiled back. The eyes around her changed. Delight turned to surprise, then rapidly curdled into suspicion and fear. How did she do that? A woman whispered, pulling her child back. "That wasn't a trick," a man muttered. "She didn't touch it. She called it heresy," another voice hissed, cold as the winter wind. The magician's face went pale. He hurriedly snatched the remaining orbs from the air, looking at Elin as if she were a plague rat. "Hey, don't ruin my show, brat," he shouted, though his voice wavered. "Give it back, you freak." Elin flinched. The smile vanished. She realized what she had done. She looked around. The friendly smiles were gone, replaced by walls of hostility. I'm sorry," Elin stammered, holding the orb out. A massive hand grabbed her shoulder, jerking her back. It was Silas. He had turned the moment he felt the crowd go quiet. He snatched the orb from Elin's hand and tossed it back to the magician. "Apologies, folks," Silas boomed, his voice echoing through the street corner, carrying the fake joviality of an embarrassed father. "My girl, she's got sticky fingers. She used to practice throwing rocks at goats back home, hands faster than her brain, you see." He shoved Elin's head down, forcing her into a bow. "Sorry, Master Magician. A wonderful trick. Wonderful." Silas quickly flicked a silver coin into the magician's hat. The coin spun, ringing clearly. The tension in the crowd evaporated instantly at the sight of silver. "Ah, just quick hands," a man chuckled. "She's got a talent for picking pockets, that one. Let's go. Let's go." Silas waved to the crowd, then clamped his arm around Elin, dragging her away. He didn't stop until they had turned down 3 alleys, diving into a darker, filthier quarter where the scent of perfume was replaced by the stench of refuse. Silas shoved Elin into a shadowed corner. He was panting, sweat beading on his forehead. "Are you insane?" Silas hissed, his eyes wild. "What did I tell you? Mute. And stupid. What in the 7 hells was that back there?" Elin trembled, tears welling up. I just thought it was beautiful. I didn't mean to. It just flew to me." "It flew to you because you called it." Silas grabbed her shoulders, shaking her. "Do you think this is a game? This is Aethelgard. This is where they burn people like you to save on firewood for the street lamps." "I'm sorry." "Sorry won't save your life." Silas let her go. He punched the brick wall hard, skinning his knuckles. He was scared. A fear he thought he had left on the battlefield. The fear of losing something important. He looked at Elin. She was curled in on herself, looking smaller than ever between the towering stone walls of the city. Silas sighed, a long, ragged exhale. He squatted down. "Elin," he said, his voice dropping, the anger replaced by a grave seriousness. "Look at me." Elin looked up with wet eyes. Silas used the hem of his cloak to wipe a smudge of dirt from her cheek. "This city," Silas pointed out toward the mouth of the alley, where the sun still shone brightly. "It is like that fox trap you opened. But it is not made of rusted iron. It is made of gold and silk. It is beautiful, it smells sweet, it makes you want to touch it. But if you touch it the wrong way, it won't just crush your leg. It will swallow you whole. In the forest, a wolf growls before it bites. But here, people will clap for you, smile at you, and the moment you look away, they will sell you to the church for a pouch of bounty money. Silas pulled a shard of glass from his pocket, the broken mirror piece they had found in the valley. He held it up to Elin. Take it. Look into it. Elin looked into the shard. She saw her grimy face and her deep black eyes. Don't let the sparkle of the city blind you, Silas instructed. Remember who you are. And more importantly, remember who they think you are. A country girl, poor and useless. That is your best armor right now. Elin nodded, gripping the shard tight. I understand, Uncle Silas. I will be a shadow. Good. Silas stood up, adjusting his cloak. Now let's find a rat hole to hide in. I need a real drink before I go mad from this damned perfume. They stepped out of the alley, merging back into the flow of people. But this time, Elin didn't look at the shops. She walked with her head down, trudging, her black eyes hidden beneath her hood. She had learned the first lesson of civilization. The brighter the light, the darker the shadow must be. And amidst the city of painted smiles, two lonely travelers walked on, carrying a secret that could burn it all down. The lower harbor of Aethelgard did not smell of perfume. It smelled of rotting fish, melted tar, and open sewage flowing sluggishly into the river. The houses here were not built of white stone. They were tumors of rotting wood piled atop one another, leaning precariously like drunks supporting each other to keep from falling. Mist rose from the river, thick and damp, swallowing the flickering oil lamps hanging outside the dilapidated taverns. Silas walked heavily. The pain in his left knee, where he had taken an arrow years ago, had returned with a vengeance. The dampness of the harbor city seemed to be gnawing right into his marrow. He tried not to limp. In this place, weakness invited vultures. An injured man was an easy target for cut purses or press gangs. Uncle, Elin whispered, clutching the hem of Silas's cloak. Can you slow down? You're sweating a lot. I'm fine, Silas growled through gritted teeth, though cold sweat beaded on his forehead despite the biting river wind. We're almost there. Just a little further. They turned into a narrow alley where rats the size of cats scurried without fear. At the end of the alley stood a two-story wooden shack. A sign creaked in the wind, depicting an anchor snapped in half. The broken anchor. Here, Silas exhaled. Keep your mouth shut. And remember, I am your father. He pushed the door open. The interior reeked of cheap tobacco and sour ale. The floor was covered in sawdust to soak up the vomit and spilled drink. Sailors, dockworkers, and petty thieves sat scattered at tables, muttering under dim candlelight. When Silas entered, the room's atmosphere dipped. Assessing, threatening eyes turned toward them. Silas stared back. He rested his hand on the hilt of his sword, puffed out his chest, and projected the killing aura of an old alpha wolf. The eyes looked away. They smelled the danger on him. Silas went straight to the bar. Behind it stood a massive woman, her arms as thick as a normal man's thighs, wiping a dirty mug with an even dirtier rag. She had a long scar running from the corner of her mouth up to her ear, making a smile, if she ever smiled, look like a shattered crack. No rooms, the landlady said without looking up. Her voice rumbled like a rolling barrel. I don't need a nice room, Silas said, placing 2 silver coins on the sticky counter. I need a dry rat hole. And no bedbugs. The woman stopped wiping. She looked up. Her eyes narrowed at Silas. Then she looked at Elin hiding behind him. She stared at Silas for a long time. Silas didn't flinch. He held her gaze, a look containing a hidden message. Suddenly she snorted. Silas, the butcher, she whispered, her voice low enough only for them to hear. I thought you died rotting in some ditch on the border. Martha, the cleaver, Silas replied, the corner of his mouth twitching upward. I thought you died of your own poison booze. Martha swiped the 2 silver coins, tucking them into her apron. You've gotten old, she remarked, glancing at Silas's trembling left leg. And weak. And you're as ugly as ever. Martha chuckled, a guttural sound. She reached for a large brass key on a hook. Last room, 2nd floor. Window overlooks the river so it stinks, but there's an escape route to the roof. I know you like a way out. Thanks, Silas took the key. And hey, Martha jerked her chin toward Elin. The girl. She looks just like you. Especially that look like she's about to bite someone. Silas glanced down at Elin. She was glaring at a drunkard who was getting too close. She takes after her mother, Silas lied. Right. Go on up. If you need hot water, draw it from the well yourself. I don't have servants. Silas nodded, dragging Elin up the creaking wooden stairs. The room was small, the ceiling low, furnished only with a wooden bed topped with straw and a broken table propped up by bricks. River wind whistled through the cracks in the shuttered window, carrying a damp chill. But the moment Silas locked the door and slid the bolt, he collapsed. He didn't sit. He crashed onto the bed. His left leg could no longer support his weight. "Uncle." Elin rushed to him in panic. Silas lay on his back, gasping, his face contorted in pain. He gripped his left knee tight. The pain felt like red-hot needles driving through the joint. Don't scream," Silas hissed. "I'm fine. Just need a minute." But Elin knew he wasn't fine. She had seen him limping for 3 days. She had seen him bite his lip every time he climbed a step. "Let me see," Elin said firmly. She pushed Silas's hands away and rolled up his trouser leg. Silas's knee was swollen, angry red, and radiating heat. The web of scars around the joint looked ready to split. It was the legacy of years marching in rain and snow, sleeping on cold ground and fighting endless battles. "It's so big," Elin whispered, eyes tearing up. "Does it hurt a lot?" "Pain is a sign you're still alive," Silas tried to joke, but his voice cracked. Elin didn't smile. She rummaged through Silas's pack. "The jar? Where is Mr. Oren's jar?" she mumbled, shaking hands, pulling out old clothes. She found the small pot of salve the one-eyed old man in the mountains had given them. "Snake fat and herbs," he had said. Elin opened the lid. A pungent smell filled the air. "Stay still, uncle," Elin said, her voice small but carrying the authority of an accidental nurse. She scooped some salve onto her hand, rubbing her palms together to warm it, then began to apply it to Silas's swollen knee. Her hands were tiny and soft, a complete contrast to the scarred, hairy leg of the old warrior. Silas instinctively tried to pull back. He wasn't used to being cared for. He was used to licking his wounds in the dark. "Don't move," Elin scolded gently. She massaged him softly, patiently working the medicine into the skin. She hummed a tune under her breath, not a spell but an old lullaby her mother used to sing. The pain subsided a little. Not because of the magic medicine but because of the warmth of her hands. Silas lay there, staring at the soot-stained ceiling. He looked at the child he was hired to protect. He was supposed to be the strong one, the shield, the wall. But now the wall was cracking and the tiny flower it sheltered was trying to patch it up. "I'm old, Elin," Silas said suddenly, his voice hollow. "I'm a dull sword." Elin didn't stop. She kept massaging his knee. "Mother said if a sword is dull you sharpen it. You don't throw it away." "Some things can't be sharpened," Silas sighed. "I thought I could get you to the south, hand you to the secret order and take my coin. But look at me, a little cold wind and I collapse." Elin stopped. She looked up at Silas. Her black eyes held no fear, only a strange seriousness. "You didn't fall because of the wind," Elin said. "You fell because you carried me over the snowy mountain. You fell because you gave me your cloak. You fell because you stood in the wind to block it for me." She took the thin blanket and draped it over his legs. "You aren't a dull sword. You are a shield. And a shield is supposed to have scratches." Silas was silent. He felt a sting in his nose. A strange feeling swelled in his chest, a feeling he thought he had buried with his wife and child 10 years ago. The feeling of being needed. The feeling of family. He raised his large, rough hand and awkwardly wiped a smear of salve from Elin's cheek. "You talk like an old woman," he grumbled, but the harshness was gone from his tone. "Sleep. I'll be fine tomorrow. Martha the Cleaver doesn't allow people to die in her inn. She hates cleaning up bodies." Elin smiled. She curled up beside Silas, resting her head on his other arm. "Uncle Silas," she whispered, her eyes closing. "What?" "Thank you for being my father today." Silas froze. His heart skipped a beat. He looked at the child drifting into sleep. He remembered at the city gate he had lied, "I am your father." It was just a role to fool the guards. But now, in this wretched inn room, with his aching leg and the pungent smell of snake fat, that lie suddenly felt heavy with truth. "Good night, kid," Silas whispered, his arm unconsciously curving around Elin, forming a protective circle. Outside the window, the river waves lapping against the stone embankment sounded like the city sighing. Aethelgard was a sleeping monster, full of traps and lies. But tonight, Silas wasn't afraid. Because for the first time in years he wasn't just fighting to survive. He was fighting to protect something more sacred than his own life. He closed his eyes, ignoring the throbbing in his knee, drifting into sleep with a new resolve burning in his mind. He would not hand this girl over to anyone unless he was certain they could protect her better than he could. Not the secret order. Not God himself. They left the inn after dark. The fog had rolled in from the river, swallowing the streets of Aethelgard in a thick, white soup. It was perfect weather for secrets. Silas led Elin away from the docks, climbing the winding cobblestone streets toward the old quarter. Here the buildings were ancient, made of black stone that seemed to absorb the moonlight. They stopped in front of a narrow, leaning building squeezed between a bakery and a coffin-maker's shop. There was no sign, only a faded symbol carved into the lintel, an open eye with a line crossed through it. Silas knocked. 3 heavy thuds. Pause. 2 light taps. "Who is it?" Silas whispered to Elin. "This man is different. Don't be afraid of his face." The door creaked open. The smell of old parchment, dry ink, and vanilla hit them instantly. It was a smell of preserved time. Standing in the doorway was a man wrapped in gray robes. He was thin as a rail, his skin pale as paper. But it was his face that drew the eye. He wore a thick leather band wrapped around his head, covering where his eyes should be. "Who disturbs the dust?" the man asked, his voice dry and rustling like turning pages. "A sword looking for a map," Silas replied. The man tilted his head. A slow smile spread across his face. "Silas." "Hello, Corvus." The interior was a labyrinth. Stacks of books rose from the floor to the ceiling, creating towering canyons of paper. There were scrolls stuffed into wine racks, maps pinned to the ceiling, and loose pages fluttering like trapped birds in the draft. Corvus, the blind librarian, moved through the chaos with impossible grace. He didn't use a cane. He trailed his fingertips along the spines of the books as if reading the room itself. "Tea," Corvus said, bustling toward a small kettle set atop a stack of encyclopedias. "I have mint from the Southern Isles. Or, at least I think it's mint. Might be hemlock. We'll find out." Silas cleared a space on a dusty bench for Elin to sit. "We don't have time for tea, Corvus," Silas said, leaning against a bookshelf. "We need passage to the sanctuary of the Silver Hand." Corvus froze. He turned slowly toward Silas. "The Silver Hand?" Corvus lowered his voice. "The secret order?" "Silas, my old friend, have you finally decided to become a monk?" "I'm delivering a package." Silas glanced at Elin. Corvus turned his head toward the child. Though he had no eyes, Elin felt as though he was staring right through her cloak. "Ah," Corvus whispered. "The package breathes. And it trembles." He walked toward Elin. Silas stepped forward, hand on his sword. "Stay back, Corvus. She's shy." "Shy?" Corvus chuckled softly. "No, she is terrified. And she is loud." "Loud?" Elin whispered, finding her voice. "But I haven't said anything." Corvus knelt in front of her. He reached out a hand. "Not your voice, child," he tapped his own ear. "Your hum. The air around you, it vibrates. Like a harp string just before it snaps." Elin shrank back. "You can see me?" "I see nothing," Corvus said gently. "The church took my eyes 20 years ago because I read books they didn't like. They thought darkness would stop me from learning." He smiled, a genuine, warm expression. "They were wrong. Eyes are distracting, child. People use eyes to judge. They see dirty clothes, they see scars, they see ugly faces, and they stop looking. But in the dark, you can only see what is true." He held his hand out, palm up. "Waiting." "May I?" he asked. Elin looked at Silas. Silas gave a curt nod. Elin placed her small hand in Corvus's. "Warm," Corvus murmured, "and kind. I feel earth, roots, life." He frowned slightly, tilting his head as if listening to a distant melody. "And sorrow. A deep, old sorrow." He released her hand and stood up, turning to Silas. His face was grave. "You are taking her to the Silver Hand because you think they will protect her?" "They are the enemies of the church," Silas said. "The enemy of my enemy is my friend." "That is a soldier's logic, Silas," Corvus sighed, moving to a desk cluttered with maps. "The Silver Hand opposes the church, yes, but they are fanatics of a different breed. The church burns witches because they fear them. The order collects them because they want to use them." Silas stiffened. "Use them? How?" "As weapons." Corvus pulled out an old yellowed scroll. "I have read their texts. They believe the children of the Black Goat are keys to an ancient power. They don't want to save the girl, Silas. They want to unlock her." The room went silent. The smell of old paper suddenly felt suffocating. "Unlock her?" Silas repeated. "You mean, weaponize her? Or consume her?" Corvus said bluntly. "Think, Silas. If you hand her over, are you saving a child? Or are you reloading a crossbow?" Silas looked at Elin. She was sitting on the bench, her legs swinging, looking at a picture book of dragons. She looked so small, so breakable. "I have nowhere else to go," Silas said, his voice tight. The church is hunting us. The winter is coming. I can't protect her on the road forever. Then you must arm her, Corvus said. He rummaged through a drawer full of strange trinkets, crystals, feathers, dried bones. He pulled out a pair of spectacles. They were round, with wire frames, but the lenses were not clear glass. They were made of smoked quartz, dark and opaque. Here, Corvus handed them to Elin. Try these on. Elin put them on. The dark lenses completely hid her eyes. To the outside world, she just looked like a child wearing sunglasses. Can you see? Corvus asked. A little, Elin said, looking around. Everything is darker. Good, Corvus nodded. Now you can look people in the face. Tell them your eyes are weak to the sun. It is a common enough ailment. He turned to Silas. This will buy you time in the city. But Silas, if you go to the order, do not go as a delivery boy. Go as a guardian. Do not give them the key until you know what door they intend to open. Silas took the scroll Corvus offered. It was a map of the city's underground, the catacombs where the order was rumored to hide. You talk too much for a librarian, Silas grunted, tucking the map away. But his tone was grateful. And you care too much for a mercenary, Corvus shot back with a grin. Silas paused at the door. Corvus, he said. Why help us? If the church finds out, then they will cut out my tongue next, Corvus shrugged. I'm running out of parts to lose. Besides, he turned his blind face toward Elin. It has been a long time since I felt a light that pure in this city. Aethelgard is full of gas lamps and gold, but it is dark, Silas. Truly dark. Don't let them snuff her out. Silas looked at Elin, who was adjusting her new glasses in a dusty mirror. She didn't look like a monster. She looked like a quirky, studious child. We're leaving, Silas said. Goodbye, Mr. Corvus, Elin waved, realizing too late he couldn't see it. Thank you for the glasses. Goodbye, little spark, Corvus waved back, accurately aiming at her voice. Trust your heart, not your eyes. Eyes lie. The heart knows. They stepped back out into the misty night. The street seemed less threatening now. Elin adjusted her smoked glasses. She looked up at Silas. Uncle, she said. I can look up now. She looked straight up at the moon. For the first time in her life, she didn't have to look at her feet. Yeah, Silas said, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. You can look up. But Silas looked down at the map in his hand. The words of the blind man echoed in his mind. They want to use her. He had exchanged one danger for another. The wolves of the church wanted to kill her. The wolves of the order wanted to use her. We are sheep among wolves indeed, Silas muttered. What did you say? Elin asked. I said, Silas straightened up. Keep those glasses on. We have a meeting with some monks. He strode forward into the fog, but his grip on Elin's hand was tighter than before. He wasn't just leading her to safety anymore. He was walking her into a lion's den, and he was the only thing standing between her and the teeth.